You're listening to the Small Business Talk podcast with Cathy Smith. Episode 10.
Small Business Talk is a podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want a better way to run their businesses without spending years doing it the hard way. Small Business Talk is hosted by Cathy Smith, who has run the same marketing agency for more than 17 years and helped hundreds of business owners achieve their marketing goals.
Hey, I'm so glad you could join us. Today, we are finishing off our 3-part series, 3 things to do before spending money on marketing. In episode 6, we defined your audience. Remember to speak to your exact customer, your ideal customer. If you try speaking to everyone, you'll speak to no one. Part 2, in episode 8. Stop thinking about marketing and selling. Add value. Identify your customer's problem. That is problem, singular, not plural. Deal with one problem at a time. That way you will be specific and your customers will be drawn to you because they will think that you understand them, you get them, you know their issues. In this episode, we will finish off the 3 things to do before spending money on marketing with story, your business story. What makes you different and why should customers, your ideal customer, buy from you instead of your competition? Story. Story is the latest buzzword. Instagram has stories, now Facebook has stories, and shortly YouTube will be bringing out Reels, which at the time of recording will be a form of story. The origin of story is primitive. However, they are still as relevant today because they help us remember the message. Stories paint a picture in our minds. Pictures tell 1,000 words, and we remember them. Stories touch our emotion, both good and bad. Think about fairy tales. They're just stories, but they were there for a message. Stranger danger. Don't take things from strangers. Don't go out into the woods by yourself. Stories are older than words. That, in days gone by, was how you conveyed your message. And in today's digital busy world, stories are still very powerful. Think about stories that we associate with brands. Coke, feeling, beach, friends, oh what a feeling. Coca-Cola. Volvo, safety, a family car, secure. You've made it if you've got a Volvo. Years ago, Uncle Toby's ran an ad and it was about porridge, and this little boy came out and he said to his mum, "What's for breakfast?" And she said, "Oh, here's some oats, here's some porridge." He sat down and he ate his porridge and his mum was chatting to him and she said, "What are you doing today, son?" And he said, "I'm running away. I've got my backpack and my teddy and I'm running away." "Okay," she said, "off you go, have a good day." About 10 minutes later, he came back and said, "Mum, can you drive me?" Now that ad is probably 25, 30 years old, but I still remember it. And I still remember that it's an Uncle Toby's ad. Do I remember other ads that were on the time? No, maybe because I like porridge. When you hear people talk about stories, you remember them. Stories paint a picture. Matthew Pollard is the rapid growth guy. And one of his case studies, his stories, is about Wendy. And Wendy went from being the Beijing China Academy to the Chinese success coach. Now that sounds like just words, and it is. But it was a total pivot for Wendy. She went from just teaching Mandarin to anybody who would answer her Facebook ad or Craigslist ad to specifically targeting her market. And her market was attorneys that were processing visas for Americans to move to China. So these people were business people. So they were moving to China to represent their company or do business there. And what she found was the difference between the Mandarin that she was teaching was she was also teaching them about culture, about something called galaxy. And galaxy is their form of rapport. When we do business in the West, it's very quick. Everything happens and we make decisions fast. If you send out a proposal and you don't get an answer within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then you're pretty much sure that it's not going to happen. Where in China, they do business deals for 50, 100 years. So they're much slower in their process of doing business. There's a lot more about respect. So when you give somebody a business card in China, they look at it, they feel it, they touch it, they analyse it before they put it in a special case and then put it in their pocket. Whereas here in the West, of course, we just pick it up, put it in our pocket and keep talking as fast as we can. Wendy taught her students things like that, about the difference of doing business in China. Of course, she was far more successful. By targeting the attorneys, the immigration lawyers that did the visas, she was then able to do a joint venture with them and offer them a fee that was as much as they would normally get processing the visa. And all they had to do at the end of their conversation was ask, "How's your Mandarin going? Is your wife learning it as well? Is your husband learning it?" And then once they said yes, they were doing fine, or no, they hadn't, "Well, I think you need to talk to the China Success Coach. She'll really help you make the transition and make it all happen." And then what they did was they did a package for the whole family. Because if the spouse or the partner is not happy, then you're not going to succeed, are you? So by that total pivot, it made such a difference to Wendy's business and went from struggling to get $55 an hour to a 6-week program that was something like $30,000. And these people went on to be very successful in China. So of course word spread and the rest is history, as they say. Now why do I tell you this story? Because it is a story and I remember it because it was a story. Now if it had have just been facts saying, okay, you need to hone your audience, you need to change your message, blah, 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 I probably wouldn't have remembered it. But because it was a story about this lady's success, about how she pivoted her business and how it works so well, then I remember it. And that's the power of story. So what stories does your business have? What stories can people associate with your brand? Think about the stories that you can tell of how you've helped people, like your ideal customer. A plumber might talk about how he saved the day for a lady at Christmas time. All the family was about to arrive and suddenly she found that her toilet was blocked up. Immediately she called the emergency plumber in her area, who came out. 30 minutes later the problem was solved and the Christmas celebrations went ahead and were very successful. So you can imagine how you could paint a very grim story to that, about how the lady was going to have all this family arriving and no toilets, etc., etc. That would be a story that would work well for a plumber. People remember stories. They associate your business with stories. So think about how you relate to brands as well and what stories you think about. That is the end of our 3-part series on 3 things to do before spending money on marketing. So we spoke about identifying your customer, speaking to your customer, and your story. Next week on the Small Business Talk podcast, we'll be talking to Gemma Heaney from HBG Tax and Accounting about single touch payroll and what that means for small business owners and what you need to do to get ready. So remember, SBT community, enjoy your journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Small Business Talk podcast and head on over to smallbusinesstalk.com.au/downloads for all the show notes and links to this episode. Remember, to be great, you must start. Pick one tip from today's episode, take action and implement it. Let's meet again next week at the same time and place. Until then, take action. And SBT community, enjoy your journey.